June 3rd, 2023. A day meant for laughter and friends became a day of terror and heroism. It began with a decision every teenager makes: where to grab a bite with friends. For Madison Schmitz, a sunny Saturday led her to a familiar restaurant, a place filled with memories of laughter and love. But as the door swung open, she glanced around, her gaze lingering just a moment too long, as if her instincts were trying to warn her. She didn't know that he was already there, watching, waiting, carrying something far more dangerous than heartbreak. By the time Madison left the restaurant, the quiet hum of a parking lot turned into chaos. A figure sprinted toward her, and within seconds the sound of laughter was replaced with screams. What led to this moment? How did a young woman's everyday life turn into a fight for survival in broad daylight? Welcome to True Crime Theater HQ. For more gripping stories like this, subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss what comes next. Spencer Pearson grew up in the quiet suburbs of Texas, just north of Fort Worth. A place where football wasn't just a pastime, it was a way of life. From a young age, Spencer stood out on the field. Despite his reserved demeanor, his talent as a defensive end made him a local star. Coaches admired his focus, teammates respected his skill, and his parents beamed with pride. But off the field, Spencer was a different person. He was the kind of boy who preferred solitude, a quiet escape from the chaos of social interactions. His parents often described him as sweet, polite, and introverted, always looking for reassurance in a world that felt too overwhelming. But beneath that quiet exterior, something was changing. Years of hard hits on the football field had left him with more than just bruises. His head injuries were frequent, and though his family didn't know it then, each one chipped away at his mental stability. As Spencer grew older, his struggles became harder to ignore. Anxiety weighed heavily on him, a constant companion that amplified his feelings of inadequacy. But life took a turn when his family moved to Florida, searching for a fresh start. It was here, in the fall of 2022, that Spencer met her. Madison Schmitz was everything Spencer wasn't. Confident, outgoing, and brimming with energy, she had a personality that seemed to brighten every room she entered. A star softball player with an infectious laugh and a fearless approach to life, Madison had big dreams and even bigger determination. People were naturally drawn to her: friends, teammates, and eventually, Spencer. At first glance, they seemed like a perfect match. He was the quiet football player, and she was the lively athlete. Their differences complemented each other, or so it seemed. Their families welcomed the relationship, excited to see the young couple so smitten. Madison even grew close to Spencer's parents, often spending weekends at their house. For a while, everything felt effortless, but as months passed, cracks began to appear. Madison's zest for life clashed with Spencer's growing insecurities. His anxiety deepened, and his need for constant validation became suffocating. The weight of his struggles was something Madison wasn't equipped to carry. By the spring of 2023, the dynamic had shifted entirely. Madison found herself drained, constantly trying to navigate Spencer's emotions while feeling her own happiness slip away. She wanted to savor her high school years, make memories, and enjoy the freedom of being young. But with Spencer, she felt trapped. On a quiet April evening, she made a decision that would change both of their lives forever. Madison ended the relationship, hoping to find the freedom she desperately needed. But what she didn't know was that for Spencer, this wasn't just a breakup. It was the beginning of something far more dangerous. What started as young love was now unraveling into a storm of heartbreak, obsession, and desperation. And as April turned to May, the warning signs would become impossible to ignore. Madison Schmitz thought breaking up with Spencer Pearson would be the end of their story, a clean break that would allow them both to move forward. But for Spencer, it was anything but over. In the days following the breakup, something shifted. The quiet boy who once admired Madison from afar became a shadow she couldn't escape. Spencer's fixation on Madison consumed him. He began watching her every move, lurking in the parking lot after school, and showing up in places he wasn't invited. When Madison tried to create distance, Spencer found ways to close the gap, sending her messages that alternated between pleading for reconciliation and accusing her of betrayal. He created fake social media accounts to track her life, stalking her digital presence as obsessively as he followed her in the real world. Madison started noticing his presence more often, a figure lingering in the background, always watching. Her unease grew with each passing day, but she tried to push the fear aside, chalking it up to the fallout of a high school breakup. But Spencer wasn't just watching, he was unraveling. The weight of rejection, combined with his long-standing struggles with anxiety and depression, pushed him deeper into despair. Days would pass where he barely ate or left the house. His once bright eyes now carried the hollow gaze of someone adrift, consumed by thoughts he couldn't control. Spencer's parents saw the change and knew something had to be done. They tried to reassure him, telling him heartbreak was just a part of growing up and that he'd move on in time. But reassurance wasn't enough. Concerned for his mental health, they enrolled Spencer in a prevention support group and sought professional help. The psychiatrist prescribed a medication to help stabilize Spencer's emotions, but it brought with it unbearable headaches, and he refused to take it after just a few days. Instead of improving, Spencer's condition worsened. His depression deepened, his anxiety spiked, and his behavior grew more erratic. Despite their efforts, Spencer's parents found themselves watching helplessly as their son spiraled further out of control. They took away his phone, hoping to sever his connection to Madison, but the obsession persisted. He found ways to keep tabs on her, ways to keep her in his orbit, even if only from a distance. Madison's mother, Jackie, saw the warning signs too. She began waiting in the school parking lot after classes, determined not to leave her daughter alone. But no matter how many precautions they took, it always felt like Spencer was one step ahead. The signs were there, each one more alarming than the last. But no one, not even those closest to Spencer, could predict the breaking point that was just around the corner. The question wasn't if something would happen, but when. And on one quiet June afternoon, the answer would come in the most devastating way imaginable. June 3rd, 2023, was supposed to be an ordinary summer day. Madison Schmitz woke up with plans that were simple but exciting. Spend time with her best friend Casey, visit the beach, and wrap it up with a bite to eat while watching the Women's College Softball World Series. It was the kind of carefree day every teenager looks forward to. The morning was filled with laughter and sunshine as Madison and Casey walked along the shore. By the afternoon, they decided to swap the sandy beach for a favorite local spot, Mr. Chubby's Wings. A casual restaurant Madison had visited countless times before. Before heading out, they texted their mums to join them for lunch. Madison couldn't explain it, but she felt an unusual sense of urgency for them to come along. At 3:47 p.m., Madison and Casey settled into their table, scanning the menu and chatting about the game. But as Madison looked up, her heart stopped. Walking through the door was Spencer Pearson. She hadn't seen him in weeks, but there he was, just a few feet away. He didn't say a word, he didn't have to. The deliberate way he passed their table and the intensity of his stare sent an unmistakable message. He wanted her to know he was there. Madison tried to shake the feeling of unease, reassuring herself that it was just an uncomfortable coincidence. But Spencer's presence lingered like a storm cloud. When their moms arrived shortly after 4 p.m., Madison made a quiet decision. It was time to leave. As they stepped outside into the afternoon sun, Spencer followed close behind. Madison's mum, Jackie, caught sight of him and ushered the group toward their cars, trying to avoid a confrontation. But Spencer wasn't going to let them go that easily. In a flash, he charged at Madison, his footsteps thundering against the pavement. She turned just in time to see him lunging toward her, a knife in hand. Before she could react, he tackled her to the ground. The parking lot erupted into chaos. Madison screamed, struggling to free herself, but Spencer's grip was unrelenting. He raised the knife and began stabbing her over and over again, her arms, her torso, her back. Jackie rushed to her daughter's aid, grabbing at Spencer with everything she had. She managed to pull him off for a moment, but his fury was unstoppable. In the scuffle, Jackie was stabbed as well, her leg and forearm bleeding as she desperately tried to protect her daughter. And then, a hero appeared. Kennedy Armstrong, a 23-year-old stranger sitting in his truck nearby, saw the attack and didn't hesitate. He sprinted across the parking lot, tackling Spencer to the ground. The knife fell from Spencer's hand, but he wasn't finished. In a moment of frenzied desperation, Spencer turned the blade on himself, slitting his throat in a gruesome attempt to end it all. As sirens wailed in the distance, Madison lay on the ground, motionless. Blood pooled beneath her as Jackie and Kennedy tried to keep her conscious. Spencer, barely alive, was sprawled nearby, the scene a horrific snapshot of violence and bravery. First responders arrived within minutes, rushing Madison, Jackie, Kennedy, and Spencer to the hospital. What began as a simple lunch had turned into a nightmare none of them would ever forget. Madison's injuries were catastrophic. 15 stab wounds, including severe damage to her spine. She was paralyzed from the waist down. Jackie and Kennedy, though injured, had wounds that were thankfully less severe. And Spencer, whose self-inflicted injuries nearly ended his life, would face the consequences of his actions in the days to come. The quiet restaurant parking lot had become the epicenter of an unimaginable act of violence, forever changing the lives of everyone involved. And yet, even in the darkest moment, courage shone through. Courage from a mother who wouldn't stop fighting for her child, and a stranger who risked everything to save someone he didn't even know. Madison Schmidt's fight didn't end on the pavement that day. When first responders lifted her from the ground, her body bore the scars of a brutal attack. 15 stab wounds, with one piercing her spine. By the time she reached the hospital, the damage was clear. Madison was paralyzed from the waist down. In the hours following the attack, surgeons worked tirelessly to save her life. Multiple surgeries stabilized her condition, but Madison faced a long and uncertain road. Lying in the hospital bed, unable to feel her legs, she asked her mother, Jackie, a question that shattered her heart. "Will I ever walk again?" Jackie, still nursing her own injuries, told her daughter what every mother would: everything's going to be okay. But deep down, she knew they were facing a life they never could have imagined. Madison's days were consumed by grueling physical therapy sessions. She pushed her body to its limits, determined to reclaim what the attack had taken from her. There were setbacks, moments of pain and frustration, but Madison never lost her resolve. Her strength, both physical and emotional, became a rallying point for her family and the community. Meanwhile, Spencer Pearson was rushed to the hospital in critical condition. His throat, slashed by his own hand, left him clinging to life. For days it was unclear if he would survive. But as the doctors worked to save him, a different kind of reckoning was already unfolding. Within hours of the attack, Spencer was charged with 2 counts of premeditated attempted first-degree murder and 1 count of aggravated battery with a deadly weapon. The charges painted a grim picture of intent, a young man who had planned his actions and followed through with devastating precision. The news spread quickly, shocking the tight-knit Florida community. How could a teenager once described as quiet and kind commit such a violent act? Friends, neighbors, and even Spencer's family grappled with the unthinkable. His parents, devastated by the attack, publicly expressed their sorrow and apologized to Madison and her loved ones. For Madison, the journey ahead was about more than healing her body. It was about reclaiming her sense of safety and fighting back against the fear that now lived in the shadows of her mind. The girl who once faced life with boundless energy now faced an uphill battle. But she wasn't facing it alone. As donations poured in to support her recovery, Madison's story became a symbol of resilience. Her family, friends, and even strangers rallied around her, sharing messages of hope and strength. In the face of unimaginable pain, Madison became a beacon of perseverance, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, the human spirit can endure. But as the community rallied around Madison, the focus shifted to the man who had caused her so much pain. Spencer, now behind bars, awaited his day in court. The question on everyone's mind wasn't just why he did it, but whether justice would be served for the lives he had shattered. The parking lot attack may have lasted only moments, but its aftermath would echo for years to come, leaving scars, inspiring courage, and demanding answers that no one could ignore. The courtroom was packed, the air heavy with tension. On one side sat Madison Schmitz, her mother Jackie, and Kennedy Armstrong, the stranger who had risked his life to save her. On the other side, Spencer Pearson sat in silence, shackled and hunched over, his once bright eyes now darkened by the weight of what he had done. For Madison, this was not just a legal proceeding. It was another battlefield, one where her voice, her courage, and her story would stand against the man who had tried to take everything from her. Madison was the first to speak. With her wheelchair positioned at the front of the courtroom, she steadied herself, took a deep breath, and began. "I've thought about this moment every single day," she said, her voice trembling but strong. "Every day since June 3rd, I've lived with the consequences of what you did. You didn't just hurt me. You tried to end my life. You tried to take my independence, my future, and my peace. But I'm still here, and Her words were raw and unflinching. She described the pain of her injuries, the long nights spent wondering if she would ever walk again, and the fear that haunted her every step. Fear that one day Spencer might be free. As she spoke, the room fell silent, her testimony cutting through the air like a blade. Next was Jackie, her voice quaking as she relived the attack. "You handed my daughter a life sentence," she said, tears streaming down her face. "Every day I watch her struggle to do the things she once did so effortlessly. You've stolen from her. And from me. And I'll never forgive you for that." Kennedy Armstrong, the man who had saved Madison's life, also took the stand. His hand, still recovering from the deep cuts inflicted during the attack, trembled as he held his prepared statement. "I didn't know Madison or Jackie before that day," he said, his voice steady despite the emotion behind it. "But when I saw what was happening, I knew I couldn't just stand by. You, Spencer, tried to destroy their lives, but you failed. They are stronger than you could ever imagine." The impact statements left an indelible mark on everyone in the courtroom. Even Spencer's own parents sat in quiet devastation, their heads bowed as they listened to the pain their son had caused. When it was Spencer's turn to speak, he rose slowly, his voice low and halting. "I can't undo what I've done," he said, his hands shaking. "I think about it every second of every day. I'm sorry for the pain I've caused Madison, Jackie, and Kennedy. I wish I could take it all back. I ask for forgiveness, though I know I don't deserve it." But his apology did little to sway the judge, who addressed the courtroom with unwavering resolve. "Some crimes are so devastating," the judge said, "that they demand the maximum punishment allowed by law." Spencer was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The room was silent as the sentence was handed down, the weight of justice finally settling in. For Madison, the verdict was bittersweet. No sentence could undo the damage Spencer had caused, but it brought a measure of closure. As she left the courtroom that day, surrounded by her family and supporters, she knew her fight was far from over. But she also knew one thing for certain: Spencer Pearson would never hurt anyone again. After the courtroom doors closed, Madison Schmitz faced an even greater challenge: rebuilding her life. The attack had left her paralyzed from the waist down, and the road ahead was filled with uncertainty. But for Madison, giving up was never an option. Her days were consumed by grueling physical therapy sessions, each one pushing her closer to a goal that once seemed impossible. She learned to adapt to a wheelchair, relearned how to sit up, and strengthened muscles that had been dormant for months. The pain was relentless, the frustration overwhelming. But Madison pushed through every moment with unwavering determination. Months turned into milestones. Small victories, like moving her toes for the first time, became the foundation of her recovery. And by the summer of 2024, against all odds, Madison took her first steps without assistance. It wasn't just a moment of triumph for her, it was a victory for everyone who had stood by her side. But Madison's journey wasn't just about physical recovery. The attack had left scars far deeper than the ones on her body. To heal, she turned her focus outward, determined to make sure others wouldn't have to endure what she had. She began speaking openly about relationship violence, sharing her story to raise awareness and inspire change. Madison's advocacy quickly gained momentum. She partnered with organizations like One Love Foundation, dedicating herself to educating young people about the warning signs of abusive relationships. Through social media, public appearances, and community events, she became a voice for those who couldn't yet find their own. The community that had once been rocked by her tragedy now rallied behind her recovery. Support poured in from all corners. GoFundMe campaigns raised thousands of dollars to cover her medical expenses. Neighbors organized fundraisers, and messages of encouragement flooded her inbox. Each act of kindness became a reminder that she wasn't fighting alone. Madison used her platform to spread a powerful message: hope. "This is just the beginning," she told her followers in one emotional post. "No matter how dark things get, there's always light to be found if you look for it." Her story became a beacon for others navigating their own battles, proving that resilience isn't just about surviving, it's about thriving in the face of adversity. Madison Schmitz, once a victim, had transformed into a symbol of strength and perseverance. And while the physical scars of June 3rd would remain, Madison refused to let that day define her. Instead, she chose to define herself by her courage, her determination, and her unwavering belief in a better future. This story of Madison Schmitz and Spencer Pearson serves as a stark reminder of how fragile life can be, and how quickly it can be turned upside down by violence and obsession. It's a testament to the importance of recognizing warning signs, of speaking up, stepping in, and offering help before it's too late. Madison's courage in the face of unimaginable adversity reminds us that even in our darkest moments, strength and resilience can emerge. Her recovery is not just a victory for her, but for every victim of relationship violence who seeks hope and healing. But this story also highlights a greater truth. No one should have to endure what Madison did. If you or someone you know is struggling with relationship violence or abuse, there are people and resources ready to help. Your voice, your bravery, could save a life. For more stories like Madison's, stories that inspire, challenge, and remind us of the complexities of human nature, subscribe to True Crime Theatre HQ. Hit the notification bell so you'll never miss another compelling tale. Together, we can bring light to the darkest corners of these stories and honor the resilience of those who lived them.